back to another episode of DWTC, where we dive into key business strategies to help you stay ahead of the curve, especially during critical times of the year. Now, as the year winds down, it's time to gear up for one of the most important administrative tasks of your year, and that's payroll wrap-up. In today's episode, we're talking about all the year-end payroll checklist items for your business. With the year entering its final stretch, it's crucial to make sure your payroll is accurate and compliant. Why? Well, staying up on top of payroll ensures you avoid penalties, maintain employee trust, and set your company up for success in the new year. Now, why is an HR pro talking about this? And here's what I can tell you. Some HR departments handle payroll and some do not. I have always been of the school of thought that I like finance and accounting to handle payroll. But that said, it is a hand-in-hand relationship. And we all know that if things are going messy with payroll, the first people who are impacted are employees, and that is an HR function. And so this is very important to any HR pro, at least it should be. And if your HR pro is like, no, I don't want to have anything to do with payroll, you need to second guess their involvement with employees. So we're going to walk through the key tasks you need to check off to ensure your payroll operations for the end of the year close out smoothly. From reviewing employee info and tax compliance to generating W-2s and updating your payroll software, this checklist I'm going to give you today is going to help you navigate the year-end process seamlessly. So let's make sure you're ready to tackle the end-of-year payroll like a pro. Here are some common payroll forms and reports you may need for your year-end payroll. We're just going to run through these quickly. The first is a W-2 form. These forms report employee wages, taxes withheld, and other relevant information. You need to provide a copy of the W-2 form to each employee and send a copy to the Social Security Administration or the SSA. Next is the W-3 form. The W-3 form summarizes the total wages, taxes withheld, and other information from all of the W-2 forms you entered to employees. This is also sent to the Social Security Administration along with those W-2 forms. Next is 1099 forms. If you have any independent contractors or freelancers, which in today's day and age, you surely do. If you don't, you're probably missing out on one. But for these contractors, you may need to issue them a 1099 MISC form if they received more than $600 in compensation during the year. And I would just add, you need to make sure that you are properly classifying the difference between an employee and a contractor. You may need an audit for that. Okay, next set of forms are the 940 and the 941 forms. The Form 940, that's the employer's annual federal unemployment tax return. And this reports your business's annual federal unemployment tax liability. The Form 941, which is the employer's quarterly federal tax return, that reports your quarterly payroll taxes. But the final return for the fourth quarter is also filed along with your year-end payroll. Next are your state payroll reports. Some states may require additional payroll reports depending on where you're operating in, such as state unemployment insurance reports, state withholding tax reconciliation reports, or state disability insurance reports. And you need to be working with your accountant on if any of these are required for you in your state. Next is the payroll reconciliation report. Now, this report summarizes year-to-date payroll totals, including wages, taxes, and deductions. It helps ensure that your payroll records match the amounts reported on your various forms that we mentioned above. And then lastly is your payroll register. A payroll register provides a detailed record of employee wages, hours worked, deductions, and employer contributions for each payroll period during the year. Remember that specific forms and reports required can vary depending on your jurisdiction and your company's circumstances. I recommend that you consult with an accountant or a payroll provider who is familiar with your specific requirements to ensure compliance. So let's get into my 2024 or any year-end payroll checklist. So first thing that we're going to want to do is focus on employee data and records. I want you to verify your employee information in this step. So you're going to review and update employee information, including contact details, tax withholdings, and benefits enrollments. We want to ensure that accurate records are maintained to issue Form W-2s to all employees. So if we have outdated addresses or outdated contact information or incorrect tax withholdings, this is going to negatively impact those W-2s. So it's great right at this time of the year. So I'm recording this toward the end of October. It would be awesome if in November, before your true year end is happening, if in November, your HR person, your office manager, what have you, would reach out to employees and say, have you moved in the last year? Has any of your contact information changed? And while we're at it, what about emergency contact? Let's have them update or audit their own HR record. And by the way, if you have an HR payroll software that has any kind of like employee self-service portal, this is key and it's going to take a ton of time off your hands. But regardless, we're going to send an email out to our employees and say, hey, we care about timely filings. We want to make sure this is getting to you in the right location. And while we're at it, we'd love for you to just take a peek at all of your information. So please go here and audit that for us by X date. That would be perfect for you to send out. Okay, next step in that payroll year-end checklist is to review overtime hours. I need you to assess and reconcile employee overtime hours to make sure that you're complying with wage laws and ensuring accurate calculations and compensation. Now, if you're not doing this with regularity, here is something that I recommend every single payroll is for you to take a look at overtime. You should have in your handbook some kind of policy around how your company handles payroll overtime. So I would recommend that you have a policy that says that overtime is not approved unless it's approved prior to the payroll by an employee's supervisor. And then you need to work with your supervisors or team leads on what that looks like from a management perspective. How many payroll hours are we going to allow? And also, let's be regularly assessing, like if we've got an employee who's consistently, or 3 employees that are consistently running overtime, at what point do we need to assess to see if we need another part-time or full-time employee, or maybe a contractor to come help in and step in and help out? So if you aren't regularly assessing your overtime hours, year end is an important time to do that for compliance purposes, but we want to be intentional with what we are allowing and encouraging our employees to do at every single payroll. We need to see what the average overtime hours are every single month, and then we need to make educated business decisions based on this data. Next step in my payroll year-end checklist is assessing benefits and deductions. So we want to evaluate employee benefits such as health insurance, retirement contributions, and other deductions, reviewing and updating enrollment forms where necessary. So we know that we have an annual opt-in period, an open enrollment OE period for all of our benefits. When is that? And so that way we can, when we're reaching out to our employees for this kind of year-end cleanup of their data, we can say open enrollment happens at this time of year, but we want to make sure that everything is, flowing smoothly and that we've got all of this information calculated. And this is also a great time for us to take a look to see if our insurance broker hasn't reached out to us and told us what the plan performance is, utilization, and recommendations of theirs. We need to knock on their door. And then we also need to be thinking about another insurance broker that we can have them go to market, see if we can get better pricing and most generally better service. And if you need a recommendation on that, I've got a couple of partners that I highly recommend that white glove their service. Yes, most insurance capabilities are pretty much the same, but service is a key differentiator. I've spent years in insurance and I could preach on this all day long. A lot of insurance brokers will just sign you up and then forget about you and then renew you every year or contact you right before renewal. And they just say like, hey, we're getting ready to renew. They should be competing for your business. They should be giving you actionable insights. If they're not, reach out to me. I'd love to help you with that. And I've also recently partnered, if you're a small business with under 50 employees and you aren't providing that required benefits, I have got a really cool option that I'd love to talk to you about that I just recently partnered with. It's what I'm offering to my team at Salt and Light Advisors. So please reach out if you want to talk insurance. Okay. So those were my key 3 areas when we're looking at employee data and records. Next, we're going to look at compliance and legal requirements. So first step in this area is to confirm compliance with local labor laws. We want to make sure that we're staying updated with local labor law changes that may affect payroll. This means we're ensuring adherence to minimum wage requirements and regulations, overtime requirements, and payroll tax laws. Again, a good CPA or accountant is going to help you stay on top of this. But this is a great time to reach out and say like, hey, just making sure nothing's changed. Do you think we have everything set up in our HR payroll software or however we make payroll? have you taken a look at our QuickBooks setup or whatever system you're using? This is a great time to do just a quick little audit to make sure that everything's set up accurately. Next step in this area is to update payroll tax information. We want to regularly review federal, state, and local payroll taxes applicable to your business and where you operate. We need to stay aware of any upcoming changes as well to stay prepared for the new tax year. We know that one example is outside of the payroll tax is that minimum wage amount for salaried or exempt employees is updating in January of 2025. So there's that, but then a ton of other things, not to mention we're obviously in the middle of election season, so things can pivot. We want to make sure that we're seeing things that are coming up so that way we're not scrambling. Again, another HR person or an accounting person should help you be able to stay on track with these things. Third step in this area is to conduct a records audit. We want to review past filings, quarterly payroll reports, and other payroll records to ensure consistency and accuracy, and just making sure that we've got all of those tracked. If we don't have them all in a similar place, then an audit is really, really hard. And by the time, let's say you move on to the next year, we're likely not going to go back and clean up the pre-existing year. So let's pull those quarterly payroll reports, our monthly payroll reports, our bi-monthly or bi-weekly payroll reports, and get them all in aggregated areas. And if we say pay stubs, all of those are in an aggregated area. So that way, when we move on to the next year, we're not worrying about the mess that might have been this year. We also need to take time to address any discrepancies or incomplete records promptly. Let's not move into the next year without making sure that all of this is cleaned up. Okay, so we went over the employee data and records area. Next, we went over compliance with legal requirements. Next step is year-end reporting. So the first step inside of year-end reporting is to generate those year-end wage reports. We want to prepare and distribute annual wage statements or Form W-2s to each employee by the IRS deadline. Now, here's what I would tell you. We know that this is coming every year, right? This is happening every single year. So if you're an employer that waits until the very last minute, come on, folks. You've got employees that are living paycheck to paycheck, and, depending on how they submitted their W-4s, they are hoping for a refund. Let's not make them wait until the very last minute. If you can get this out to them sooner, let's do it. We know it's coming. Let's get those books closed and then get these reports filed. I have even had very large employers that I've worked for in the past, before I was an owner, before I was K1, when I was waiting on these folks. And I'm just thinking is this new information? Let's get this stuff processed and move forward. And so that way our employees can have their information and then potentially get those refunds. They're all waiting for that. This is the blessing part of the year. I mean, some of us, like business owners, are paying in or, taking to see what a look at our tax implications are, but a lot of our employees are getting refunds. Let's make this happen. We also want to carefully review and reconcile the data to avoid errors on the forms. Let's do this right the first time. Okay, next step is filing those annual payroll tax returns. We want to submit federal and state tax filings, such as our Form 941 I mentioned earlier, those W-3s, and state unemployment tax returns. We want to ensure to meet the deadlines to avoid penalties or interest charges. Let's not extend them. Let's just meet the deadlines in a timely fashion. And then our third step here is reconciling earnings and tax reporting. So we want to balance total wages reported and taxes withheld with year-to-date payroll records. If any differences are found, we want to identify and rectify the errors promptly. Now, if you're not doing any of these and you're just like, oh my gosh, these are steps that I don't even know about, your accountant's doing this. So maybe this is going to give you that information to ask them the questions. A lot of times we rely on our accountants or our HR people thinking that they know everything. Checks and balances are good. Having these conversations are good. Asking people where they're at in the process is excellent. There's nothing wrong with accountability. If any differences are found, we want to identify and rectify those errors promptly. And if you show that you have any level of knowledge and you're asking your accountant, like, hey, where are we at with reconciling earnings in our tax reporting? Even if that's all you know is to repeat these words that I'm asking you, your accountant probably is going to feel more open to share additional information with you, maybe trends that they've seen. If you are an individual who doesn't understand their accounting or doesn't understand their payroll, your accountant or your payroll person probably isn't talking to you about the details inside of that. That means that if they run across an issue, they might be worried that you wouldn't know the answer and they're trying to figure it all out themselves. You want to know what's going on inside your business. It's very important. Even if at the beginning you feel ignorant to it, if you're truly fully relying on a payroll or tax professional or an accountant all by themselves, you want to ask them a few questions. They would love for you to be involved. They probably just don't know how much information you know or how much you want to be involved. But checking in and asking them these questions is very powerful, and it's going to help you better understand the financial state of your business in the future. And that's what you need. If that contractor leaves, if that employee leaves that's been doing your HR or your payroll or your accounting, you don't want to be flying entirely blind and then making a poor hiring decision just to backfill that role because you feel ignorant in that area and now you're scared. We want to have some level. I'm not saying you have to get in and be a CPA. I get that. As a business owner, we've got what we're good at, but having these conversations is important. Some level, even at a very high level. Okay. Our final step in this area is to prepare for the new year. So this is our fourth major step to prepare for the new year. We've audited the records. We've submitted what we need to do. We're making sure that we're following compliance. We're ensuring that we're providing accurate data. But next, let's prepare for the new year. Let's, close the books on the current year, but also prepare for the new year. So the first step I'd recommend here in this checklist is to update your payroll software. I would want you to make sure that you're ensuring that your payroll software is updated with the latest tax rates, withholding tables, and regulatory changes for the upcoming year. If you are doing payroll and your payroll is detached from HR records, or your payroll is detached from your, let's say, your time submission, your time clock, now is a great time to say, you know what? Maybe it's time that we get a robust system in. Maybe we don't want all of these disjointed systems. I did that when I was a small business owner, but maybe it's time for me to learn what's really out there. There are HR and payroll software systems that are far more reasonably priced than what you probably think. You're probably thinking you're saving money by doing it all in QuickBooks. So you've got your HR data somewhere else, and you've got your payroll data in here, and maybe your folks aren't being really great on clocking in. Now is a great time to say, how are we doing in this area? And do we want to streamline this with better software? Next up is to set employee benefits for the next year. So I mentioned this earlier. If your insurance broker is not an active part of your business and you never hear from that person except for maybe at renewal time, it's time to kick that person to the curb, or at a bare minimum, talk to someone else. So we want to be reviewing and updating our employee benefits plans if necessary. We want to communicate changes transparently with employees to provide them with these updates well in advance if we're going to be making an update. There are so many cool things that you can do out there. We've heard of flexible spending accounts. We've heard of healthcare spending accounts. Lifestyle spending accounts are now becoming a thing, and I'm so excited for this. So I'll give you an example of how I do this with my team. I have got a small but mighty team at my HR and advisory consulting business, which is Salt and Light Advisors. And so I have a partnership with an organization that essentially holds a lifestyle spending account for me. And then my employees can go in and opt into any benefits that they want to and use that lifestyle spending account. So my employees can go purchase an Aura ring. If you ever watch me on YouTube, you probably see this ring flash around. I'm obsessed with the data on my Aura ring. I actually have a code to get you $40 off if you want to buy an Aura ring. So please reach out to me if that's the case. They're amazing. I could talk about them all day long, but my employees can go I deposit $350 a year for my employees. And what I used to do is say, at your 1-year anniversary, submit any receipts to me that you've spent for, let's say, massages or therapy or your Aura ring, your gym membership, maybe it's a healthy food subscription, any of that give me those receipts and I will reimburse you up to $350. Well, what I am moved to is this partner that I've got, and they hold this lifestyle spending account for me. And so I make deposits into every single one of my employees' accounts. And then my employees can go and they can get, let's say, they can get individual health plans, dental plans. They can get fertility treatments with this, things that aren't covered with insurance. There's a ton of teen coaching. If they've got a teenager, they can, of course, get their own therapy. There's a ton of options outside of the traditional healthcare plan, or they can use it to buy a traditional healthcare plan. There's a ton of options that they can do in here. Now, I don't have 50 employees, so I'm not required to do this, but we all know how hard it is to recruit and retain the top performers, the good ones, right? And so even as a small business, we want to provide some level of benefits to our employees. But I know that BUCA, let's say those big insurance plans, those Blue Crosses, United Healthcare, those Cigna, those big Aetna, those big healthcare plans, those are pretty unaffordable for a small business owner. They're going to cost you so much. And I would rather pay my people more competitively and then do this lifestyle spending account and let them make the decisions that they want to make. Or maybe they've got a spouse and they're on the spouse's plan, but they can still use the dollars that I would be willing to contribute for other things above and beyond. So this is a great time to be analyzing your employee benefits for the new year. Next thing we want to do is communicate with our employees. We want to inform our employees about the upcoming changes in payroll processes if we have those, any tax updates, any benefits modifications, and provide them with resources to understand tax forms and address any queries they may have. We might want to recommend that they find their own accountant to go through for tax. Usually we say as an HR or payroll person, I can't give you advice on that. And then we just end the sentence right there. It's like, can we not resource our employees a little bit more? If we've got younger employees, if we've got employees who are new to the local area, can we not give them some recommendations to find additional information or maybe a few websites to point them to? Like, let's take a look at our employees and serve them at a higher level at the year end and into the new year. These are our employees. We want to be good stewards with our resources, right? With our money. Our money is going to these people. Don't we want these people to be more satisfied, more informed, more educated, so that way they feel happier? There's a ton of data out there right now showing that employees are more stressed over finances than they've ever been. And from an employer perspective, here's how that translates. More than 50% of our employees have admitted that this changes the way they operate inside the business. Whether that means they're going to make a dangerous, risky decision when it comes to making ethical choices inside of the business because they're hurting for money, or maybe it's just that they're distracted from their general tasks because they're stressed out about money. Whatever it is, we could just turn a blind eye and say, we pay them what we pay them and it's up to them to figure it out. Or we could take a more proactive and caring and thoughtful and intentional approach and say, let's help. Let's get them maybe Dave Ramsey resources or point them to a financial institution that offers free classes, or maybe we offer free online classes in our learning management system, or we find some classes on LinkedIn about financial literacy. There's a ton maybe we give them books about financial health and do a book club with them. Now is a great time to assess who you are as an employer. And while I've been talking about payroll specifically, there's a ton of ways that we can take it beyond the processing. So we've covered some key steps in making sure that your year-end payroll process is smooth and compliant as we close out the year. As a business owner, you know how important it is to stay on top of payroll, both for compliance, but mostly for employee satisfaction. By following this checklist, you'll be well equipped to avoid common pitfalls and make sure everything is in order before we head into the new year. Remember, as a 20-year HR pro, I can tell you that preparation is everything. Staying updated on labor laws and keeping accurate, detailed records throughout the year doesn't just help you at year end, it helps you avoid headaches all year long. When you have a solid payroll process in place, your employees feel valued and your business is set up to thrive. If you're feeling overwhelmed by the year-end tasks, don't hesitate to look into payroll service providers. They can automate many of these processes, giving you more time to focus on your business and less time worrying about compliance. We know wrapping your arms around all of the fiscal year-end compliance items can feel like chaos, but here's to wrapping the end on a high note and heading into the new year ready to tackle new challenges. Don't waste the chaos, embrace it. Till next time.